Adamawa State Governor Amadu Fintiri has constituted a 21-member Relief and Post-Recovery Committee in response to the recent flooding in Yola South local government area of the state. Washi Wonosiko, Chief Press Secretary to the governor, disclosed this in a statement. Recall that the flood, which occurred last Sunday, claimed 23 lives and left many people displaced. The committee, which is to be chaired by the State Deputy Governor, Professor Kaletapwa Barauta, also has Secretary to the State Government, Awal Tukuru, as member. It comprises representatives from various government agencies, security forces, and community leaders. Fintiri urged the committee to identify ways of bringing succor to the affected communities and to also develop strategies for post-flood recovery. He assured the public that the government will do its best to ensure the safety and well-being of residents. Well, Christopher Chinedumuije is a professor of disaster management and humanitarian studies. Is here to look at this disturbing development and how to avert flood disaster in the future. Glad to have you join us on Newsnight, Christopher.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. What's your sense of the flooding, the response, and the seemingly usual lack of proactiveness on the part of authorities responsible?
Yeah, that's a major gap we've had over the years in the country because, like I've always said before, that we are not a learning country. Every year we have these floods happening over and over again, and we always want to have it reoccur before we respond. But in disaster management, the main components are not response, recovery, or reconstruction. The main components are prevention and preparedness. All right, and until as a nation we are more intentional about prevention and preparedness, then we'll continue to have more casualties. This is just halftime, and it's really not the real flood season. And if states, those 19 affected states, are not taking preventive action and building their anticipatory action plan at the state level, we're going to have more casualties. More people are going to die. More people are going to be missing. And also more children, women are going to be affected. All right, so as a country, we need to move from the response and recovery mindset to a prevention and preparedness mindset. All right. Last year, we had similar flood in Borno State.
Yeah.
All right, and the government out of Borno State became a place for several donations. All right, but till now, we've really not seen lessons learned from the flood of last year and how it has informed, inspired the nation to take preventive action and build preparedness in subsequent years. All right, the Hydrological Service in Nigeria has done a very good job in trying to project the forecast the states at risk with flood. All right, states at risk to flood. All right, but these states, when you ask them now, the governors of those states, the state emergency management agencies of those states, what they have done, all right, to build preparedness, if they even have anticipatory action plan at the state level, I tell you, 90% of those states will tell you they don't have.
That's a very big figure.
Yes.
Now, we will get to, because you mentioned the casualties, those are numbers, we'll get to that. But a committee has been set up by the government to find ways of bringing succor, just read that, to the affected and to also develop strategies for post-flood recovery. What are your expectations?
Yes, my expectations, one, is to see that the government really learns from the incident. What is the cause of this flood? All right, what mechanisms will be put in place to ensure that this kind of flood does not happen? Because from the things we've read on the news, the flood seemed to be caused by some man-made. It's man-made driven. All right, what policies are they going to put in place? It's not just responding now, providing some relief materials and helping the persons affected go back to their homes. All right, what mechanisms mechanisms are we going to put in, as the state going to put in place to ensure that that does not happen?
Which is the usual narrative over time.
Yes.
But let me ask you this question. You are into disaster management, and I'm sure you're probably helping, I don't know whether to say, formulate policies or drive narratives that could move us from response to proactiveness. So are you doing anything particularly, to help the government or to change their paradigm, or to set agenda how we can prevent instead of...
Yes, of course we've been advocating. I currently lead Go Prime Organization Nigeria, which is a frontline organization responding to humanitarian crisis and disaster. I currently also sit in the advisory board of the United Nations Country-Based Pool Fund. And the United Nations Country-Based Food Fund this year has been generous, from lessons learned last year, has been generous with making provisions of about $202 million for partners, as mostly local partners, to be able to respond. And I am sure, because I've also been part of the conversations, the anticipatory action planning for the Northeast, all right, Bono, Adamawa, and Yobe, all right, and they've supported in developing the anticipatory action framework for these states, all right? And it does not end with Bono, Adamawa, and Yobe. We have about 19 states that have been projected, all right? So government should be able to learn lessons from this. There have been several conversations with the Office of the Vice President on anticipatory action, building a national framework. And even when you have this national framework, state governors have to domesticate this framework.
Are they doing that?
No. At the moment, there's really no information if they are doing that, all right? But this should inspire them to want to go back to say, hey, we want to see what the federal is doing, you understand, with respect to preventing impact of flood disaster and other disasters, because these things happen annually, all right? And we build our own state level, have our own state-led anticipatory action framework, because until you have that framework, the state government cannot build preparedness.
Yeah.
All right? They cannot build preparedness. They cannot
build.
Yeah, they
Nothing
cannot
on, something on nothing.
Absolutely, will remain reactive. They cannot provide the relevant appropriations, budgeting, and financing to be able to respond.
Right.
All the states have SEMAs, State Emergency Management Agencies, but STEMA cannot work if they don't have the right capacity. All right, and capacity comes with training, it comes with resources and what have you. So you have the incident now in Adamawa. All right, the committee that is set up by the Adamawa state government is reactive. Ideally, they would have foreseen this. All right, the people who are at risk and the communities affected in Yola South, they would have come up with a plan. Is either an evacuation plan, all right, and what have you. Or they would have also anticipated that, oh, this road that is being constructed by the said company or whatever, it's does not
on a channel.
It's not on a channel, and it does not pose any risk to the people.
Let me ask you two questions at a go from what you're discussing. I hope my line of thought has not run away from me. But let me ask you this: these figures published by NEMA are not just numbers, they are human beings. Is this country really placing value on the lives of its people?
Yes. You know, when those numbers seem to be very much, all right, even if it's one person that died, you understand, the nation needs to take it very serious. All right? And these numbers, for me, should inspire the nation to do what? Ensure that they are more proactive in their thinking than reactive. All right? And if it does not do that, then we'll be right to draw the conclusion that the nation does not place life on the people and also what happens to the people. All right? Because flood is something we anticipate every year. Last year we had Borno. This year we had Niger. We also have Adamawa. We have other states. Imo has been projected. Borno has been projected. Other states have been projected as well. But we are not seeing this at the state level first, before you even talk about the federal government. Because the federal government, no matter what measures they put in place, if the state government do not adopt these measures, domesticate them, you understand, and make appropriate provisions, there is very little the federal government can do. Very little the federal government can do.
Really?
Yes.
So you start from the state?
From the state. All right, because these floods are happening at the state level. All right, the people who have the right to respond first is the state. That's the State Emergency Management Agency.
So we should be holding the governors of the states accountable.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
First, before you even talk about the federal government.
Yes, it is when the capacity is beyond the state and they call out to the federal government and the federal government does not respond, that is when we hold the federal government responsible. All right, but in Nigeria, we have a culture of always blaming the president.
This is interesting.
Yes.
This is quite interesting.
Always blaming the president. When things happen at the state level, we blame the president. But whereas the state government are supposed to, they were in disaster management, you have the NEMA, National Emergency Management Agency. Okay. You have the SEMA, State Emergency Management Agency. And you also have the local government level emergency management agency. When these things happen at the local government level, it's even the local government emergency management agency that should be able to respond. When they do not have the capacity as a result of the scale or the scale they've planned for is exceeded, they will call on support from the state. And if the state tries to respond and they do not have the capacity to respond, they will call on the federal government.
Quite interesting, Christopher. I mean, all of us are learning stuff here that state government should be held accountable. Before I let you go and you run, this is quite, the moment flood occurs, you know, the next thing you hear is move from where you are to wherever. So I'm always concerned, whether state, federal, local government, shouldn't we be thinking about building centers where people can habitate, can be taken to, moved to, people who are displaced? Shouldn't we be thinking about that? Shouldn't that be a part of this disaster management?
We should not see Nigeria as a humanitarian nation, a nation that expects disaster, all right? Because every government should ensure that disasters don't happen, you understand? And how do they ensure that disasters don't happen? The relevant agencies does the relevant forecast, you understand, and take proactive measures to ensure that these disasters don't happen. But in the event they happen, we expect that it should be temporal. All right? In principle, humanitarian response to disaster shouldn't exceed 3 months, maximum 6 months. All right? So you shouldn't be talking about building. All right? But rather, we should be talking about transit camps. All right? Transit camps. And transit camps, any facility that is redundant can be used as a transit camps. Tents provided and whatever. When everything goes down, then the people can now go back to their normal life with the relevant reintegration packages and what have you. So for me, building it's not it. All
Transit.
right. Yes.
Transit. Thank you so much, Professor. Right.
Christopher Chinedumuije.
Christopher Chinedumuije, a professor of disaster management and humanitarian studies, for being on News 9 to discuss this question of flooding.
Thank you so much for having me.